What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good day as always. Before we get too far in this video, I did want to mention that we're still giving away an SCX24 at 1,000 subscribers. To enter, all you have to do is subscribe, like this video, and comment done down below. With all that being said, let's jump into today's video. So I went ahead and picked up a set of the MEUS Racing ISOKINETIC axles for my SCX24. Now I did go ahead and go with the metal housings. You can get nylon housings. I just wanted a little bit more weight down low to lower the center of gravity. Now these things are really cool because of the turning radius on them. Now they can get this because of the joint they use. It's basically a double cardan joint, and you find those on drive shafts and a lot of other stuff on the full-size crawlers. Another cool thing is these are much wider than your factory SCX24 housings. They're plus 5mm axles, so they're significantly wider than the stock setup, which will give you a much wider footprint, making it a little bit harder to tip over on those side hill obstacles. It also came with a bunch of stickers. Let's go ahead and toss one on the toolbox. We're going to start decorating this thing with all the stickers from the parts that we use on our RC cars. And then it actually came with a ton of different hardware. I'm sure we're going to have extra hardware left over. It looks like we got a link razor. It looks like we got an adjustable servo tray, which will be really cool. And it'll allow us to run a pretty big variety of different servos on this thing, which is good because that's the next thing we're going to upgrade on this specific SCX24. Looks like we got our steering links here. We're going to have to go ahead and build these. I've seen a couple comments that these are kind of a pain to put together, but it shouldn't be too bad. I believe these ends just kind of self-thread on there. And then we've got a ton of different hardware in here. I can't see us using all of this, so we should have quite a bit left over. And here's the rig we're going to be putting it on. So it's basically just a bunch of random parts put together. So we've got the Endura brushless, we've got a MEUS Racing low center of gravity chassis, Endura shocks. Then if we flip it over and take a look at the other side, we just got a bunch of random links actually. I believe the front is C10, the back is, I forget. But we got a bunch of different links on this thing. As you can see, it's from 3 different sets actually. We're going to go ahead and pair these with the ISOKINETIC axles, wrapped with some Little Guy Racing parts, Swamp King tires, and some Enduro brass beadlocks. These things are actually really heavy, so they should add a ton of unsprung weight down low to keep the center of gravity as low as possible. And we're going to be pairing that with a Lexan body to help even more. All of these parts, including the axles, will be linked down below if you want to pick up a set for yourself. Now to get started, I am going to use the supplied underdrive gears for the rear, which will essentially give us overdrive in the front, which should give us an even better turning radius and make it much better at crawling up hills at least. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and remove the rear diff cover. Now that we got that, we should be able to remove the pinion gear setup here. We're going to want to make sure we keep all the bearings together because we are going to be reusing these. And then to get the center I guess ring gear is what I'd call it on the full-size Jeeps out, we're going to go ahead and have to remove the axle shafts as well. Now to remove these, it's pretty simple. We're just going to go ahead and take these 2 screws out of each side, which is basically clamping that bearing in there. Once those are out, we'll be able to pull the axle shaft just like this, and then we'll have all the gears removed and we'll be ready to install our underdrive in the rear axle. Now with the new gears installed, we're going to go ahead and bolt everything back together, and we'll install that link riser while we do that. So we got our diff cover back together right here. We've saved the last 2 bolts. We'll go ahead and pop this in here. I will say the fitment has been great so far on all of these parts. No issues yet. And just like that, we got it all ready. This one is basically ready to bolt up under the rig. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the front axle, build the steering, put together the steering servo mounting plate, and get this thing set up. And just like that, I went ahead and finished the front axle. Now I did want to show you guys kind of close up. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see it on camera, the angles of those end joints, and you're going to pretty much want the flat sides facing each other where the 2 come together. That way there's enough clearance to turn, and you're not going to have any binding or any issues there. But this all went together pretty easy. The end fittings for the steering, you just kind of self-thread on there. You got to put a little bit of pressure, and they'll start to thread on and get together pretty easily. And then as far as the servo mounting plate, you're pretty much going to play around with that until the fitment is right for your servo. There's quite a bit of adjustability in it actually, but we got mine set up perfectly for the EMAX servo. But let's go ahead and toss this thing underneath of the SCX24. And just like that, it is bolted up and ready to go. And this thing is looking wide. And that's before we even put any tires on it. But let's go ahead and get the back axle under it as well. Just like that, we put the tires and the axles underneath of the SCX24. This thing is getting heavy and it's getting wide. I think we're going to need a new steering servo sometime soon. I can't imagine the EMAX lasting very long with this setup. But now that it's installed, the only thing left to do is hit the course, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so for the first obstacle, we're just going straight for a hill climb that the overdrive should be noticeable in. So we're going to go up the steep part here in between the two cones. This is pretty tricky for some of the lighter weight rigs, but with overdrive and all the brass added to this rig, it should be pretty easy. So let's see how it does. This is the tricky spot right here. It gets real steep, but it climbed it real easy. It made it up that with no issue whatsoever. Alright, let's go ahead and give this obstacle a try. This one's still hill climb, but it's ledges, and I built this to be pretty much the max capabilities of this before. But it looks like with these axles, it's crawling right up with no issue. And this spot right here is the part we added in our last video where we expanded the indoor course. Got a little bit high centered there, but looks like we'll be able to crawl through this on the side here and get over that ledge. Now, I think it should be able to do this pretty easy. This is just the bridge with the flexing rocks on it. See how it does. We're actually getting caught up a little bit, so I believe these diffs are a little bit bigger than the factory diff setup, and they get hung up just a little bit. But that's not really the end of the world. It's usually just a matter of picking a better line. Let's go ahead and try this obstacle now. Now, I've not been able to do this yet without these axles at least. So let's see if these axles were the deciding factor. If we can make this obstacle. Still looking a little tricky here. The goal of this was to make it as hard as possible while still being slightly possible. We're making progress here actually. Try not to fall off that other edge there. This is where that steering radius turns real helpful. And we actually got up that. I'm actually really surprised by that because I've not been able to do that yet. Alright, one last half-finished obstacle to go, and I think it should do this with ease. This is another one of those ledge-type obstacles. But I just want to see how well it does this. A little bit of tire spin, nothing unusual for this one. Crawled right up it, no issues whatsoever. This thing is actually pretty capable. Now let's go over some final thoughts on these axles after I've installed them and ran them a little bit. Now I'll say pros, the weight is really good, so it keeps your center of gravity very low. Turning radius is amazing. Downside, the diff's a little bit bigger and it does get caught up, but that's more of a skill issue on my part. I didn't pick the best lines. Now I will say, these things are a game changer compared to factory as far as the steering angle. You can turn so sharp, and that's really good for these indoor courses. Now, I will also say the quality was really good. I was a little bit concerned with how many parts there were that were adjustable, that there might be some fitment issues or anything, but quality was amazing. This went together super easy, and it really only took 30 to 45 minutes to get these things set up and underneath of the SCX24. So if you were thinking about getting a set of these, I would definitely recommend them. They're probably one of my favorite SCX24 axles right now. I'll link them down below in the description for you guys to check out. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.